Good morning, and thank you for joining us for this webinar, Show Me the Money, Financing Exports during Uncertain Times. This online event is brought to you this morning by the MESQUITE Alliance, or the Maryland Partners in International Trade. And I'm Rebecca Bellinger, the Executive Director of the Center for Global Business at the Robert H. Smith School of Business at the University of Maryland, College Park, and I will be serving as your moderator this morning. I'm joined today by an all-star lineup of speakers and partners, and because there are so many of us speaking this morning, we may go over a little bit past noon, and I may interject as others are speaking to make sure that we can move the agenda along. So thanks so much for your patience. On our agenda today are three main points. First, Rife International, a local Maryland company, will serve as a case study to demonstrate how they have been able to successfully work with financing partners to secure payments for their exports. Second, we'll hear from one private bank and two federal institutions on how to best work with them to finance exports. And third, the MESQUITE Alliance partners will each in turn present a few of our own resources to help you with financing and other aspects of your export practice. And before we begin, I'd like to take a minute to remind you of a couple of things to help us move smoothly through our agenda. First, this webinar is being recorded. It will be made publicly available via our websites and emailed out to all participants afterwards for future viewing. We will also handle questions via the chat function. So throughout the presentation, please feel free to send your questions to everyone, and we'll try to get through as many as we can in the order in which they are received. Once you close out of the webinar, at the end, you'll see a pop-up window with a link to take our 2-minute survey about this event. We appreciate in advance you are taking just a few minutes to complete that, as your feedback is really critical to the development of future MESQUITE Alliance webinars. I'd also like to remind everyone to please keep your cameras off and your microphones on mute throughout the presentation, unless, of course, you're one of our guest speakers. And if there are any technical difficulties on our end or on yours, we thank you in advance for your patience. I'd also like to take a couple of minutes now at the beginning to introduce the MESQUITE Alliance, which is the sponsor for today's webinar. The MESQUITE Alliance brings together key partners from industry, local, state and federal government, and higher education in Maryland to raise awareness of existing export promotion programs, facilitate greater access to and usage of these resources, and build new collaborative, globally focused programs. You will hear from all four partners this morning: the USIAC, Maryland Department of Commerce, University of Maryland, and the District Export Council. And each of the partners will introduce their unit as I talk about the resources available to you. While all four partners exist as separate entities that you may or may not have worked with already, we come together in this alliance to share information, collaborate on programming for the benefit of companies like yours here in Maryland, and to connect you with the vast network of other entities that support international trade at the local, state, and federal levels. Today's webinar is content that we have developed to support a part of this exporting cycle or process. And the graphic that you see before you on the screen is a graphic developed by the MESQUITE Alliance as a tool to help you understand the process of exporting and to show you where in the process you might be if today's content is useful and relevant to your business. Since we're talking about financing and getting paid, we're firmly grounded in step 8 today, which is getting paid. But you'll find that financing is something that you'll want to educate yourself about and plan for in every step along the way. And in future MESQUITE webinars, we'll continue to reference this graphic. I'd like to turn it over now to Kwabena of Rife International.
Thank you, Rebecca. You guys hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to present, and I will go straight into it. My name is Kwabena Osei Sarpong with Rife International. I am President CEO of the company. I'm also a DEC representative, for the District Council for Exports. I'm joined 2020 this year. My presentation is basically a case study to kind of help, companies that are here who are new or existing to understand how we were able to grow our financing versus develop financing to grow our market shares in international, markets. With that said, I will start with the first slide. Marina, can you move on to the first slide? RIPE International is an energy efficiency, sustainable development, and construction services company that has been in business since 2007. We've won several awards in what we do. The company has proven itself. And as we did projects here, we had a focus or a goal of going overseas and expanding our presence there. So we've dealt with federal agencies, local agencies, state, commercial, a variety of clients. RIPE holds certain certifications, for those who are small businesses, that want to learn about those. It's very helpful. We're SBA 8A certified, we're M.MBE certified, and a few other certifications that help, to grow your business, whether locally or overseas. Now, where do we do work? In the United States, we do work primarily in the Mid-Atlantic U.S. We'll go anywhere from, maybe South Carolina or North Carolina, all the way to New York, in doing projects. Our projects typically, are energy efficiency based, construction based, like I mentioned earlier, and also some consulting, and advisory services, all related to the green industry. Next slide. So there are a couple of things. This is supposed to be a working session, so there are a couple of things that we should take note of. And as you kind of listen in, if you're a new exporter, there are a few things you should consider, and the existing exporter, a few things you should look at. So a couple of questions here. If you're a new exporter, well, how do I perform, the right market research? Should be a good question. Another interesting question is, how do I raise $100,000 in investment, to new markets or new market entry? How do I get working capital? I'm sure it's in a lot of people's minds. And how do I find the right resources to support my export strategy? This is usually for our new exporters. For existing exporters, how can I scale my exports, my business? How do I be protected from economic and political, it's unrest, risks, whatever you call it, in the marketplace? And how do I find the right resources to support my export growth is the question that typically on people's minds. Next slide. So it comes to, well, how do we do it? How did RIPE do it? Or how are we doing it? Well, the first thing is to identify what your target market is. So understanding, well, what am I trying to do? This sounds like a very simple, cliche question, but it's very important for you to understand what your target market is, so you can really align your resources towards addressing, that target market. In the case of RIPE, our target market was emerging economies, and that was what we focused on. And emerging economies is also obviously fairly broad, so we focused in a little bit more into Africa, and I'll talk more about that. So that's identifying your target market, and I'm pretty sure most of you here either have or are in the process of identifying that. Now, secondly, we got a commercial specialist from the Department of Commerce to work with us. Ours, was Aisha. I'll give her a shout out. She was tremendous. She helped us really understand the process. There's a lot of guidance in what we need to do, and exposed a lot of resources, that we didn't know about or didn't know how to go after it to us, which we really utilized. And some of the resources are what I'm going to talk about next. So one of those was Trade Winds. Trade Winds, it's an event that's organized by the Department of Commerce, and it basically exposes Maryland businesses to different markets. In our case, we went to South Africa and also went to Romania, Southeastern Europe. And those markets were very different, and yet they had, a string of things that were alike. But it exposed us to, really the international difference in how things are perceived, and also what the markets kind of look like. But in this process, we had the State Department organizing meetings. We met with a lot of high-profile officials from both government and trade or industry. And this value, we pegged that value alone for Trade Winds at about $100,000. And that's sometimes saving money equates to, raising money. So you should think about that. That was a lot of value for us, Trade Winds. The next one is grants, and market research. Department of Commerce organizes market research, for you and your organization. And that, could cost you anywhere $50,000 if you hire a consultant. And they do that, really for free. And we also got about $20,000 in grants that we use for travel and other international related, marketing things. That was very helpful to the organization. Next slide. Again, another one that was very important was the Maryland Global Export Consultant. Now, this is championed by the University of Maryland. So Rebecca and Marina, shout out to you guys. This was a great opportunity for us to partner with MBA students, at the Smith Business School. And the interesting thing is, they actually fly down to your region, So in us, for our region, we focused in on Ghana. They flew, I believe, 3 students down to Ghana and did extensive research. I was actually in the country with them, so I saw what they did, extensive research, and organized, really incredible meetings, for us to have. And in that process, they developed the SWOT analysis, so you could really understand, where you stand from your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So that was really excellent. They put together a package for us and did a presentation at the end of that. And that's been a guiding principle, a guiding notebook for us, as we expand, into that market in Ghana. On the right-hand side, you'd see a photo of us, with the University of Maryland MBA students, with the Deputy Minister of Education in Ghana. And that was one of the agencies that, we met with. It was really incredible. So that was a great resource and program. And again, that's probably $50,000 worth of value, that you should take advantage of. Finally, e-commerce, Department of Commerce has a website globalization, resource. That can literally go on your website, take a look at it, tell you the things you're not doing right, the things you need to do right to globalize your website, to increase your SEO. So we're in the process of doing that right now, and it's been really remarkable, the content and information that they provide, for us to be able to kind of move our company forward. So e-commerce is a big part of that services. And again, if you talk to a website company or SEO expert, they're charging you anywhere, $10,000, $15,000, $20,000, and all of these, you get for free. Well, the question is, what did you guys get from this? After all of this, what was the benefit? Well, the first thing is, Rife was able to establish ourselves in the international marketplace, in Ghana and Africa. We've developed a really strong presence there because of these programs that, we took advantage of. 2, from what we quantified, we probably received about $250,000 in support. If we paid for it outside, that's how much we would have paid, and probably more. But from quantifying it, this is money that is not necessarily in your hand, but you didn't have to spend it. So this is quantifiable dollars, that we saved in growing, our business. Well, so then the curiosity is, so what have you gotten out of it? Well, we developed a pipeline of about $15 million in projects, solar, renewable energy, all over Africa, within the western and southern parts of Africa, and expanding also a little bit into the northern parts. And this is as a result of these resources, that we took advantage of and we're smart about. Finally, one of the things that makes businesses kind of continue to grow is if people, see you as an expert in what you do. And in our region, in Africa, even though it's a big continent, in the southern parts and the western parts, we're seen as an expert in what we do and have an advisory board, role in the largest energy conference, in Africa. And also we are panelists every year for the last couple of years, which positions us for even more growth. And all of this was really made possible by, taking advantage of these resources and applying them step by step and being very diligent, in that process. Next slide. I just listed a few resources, that other resources that you see here. Exim Bank is a great one, Small Business Administration. They are all on here to talk. USCDA is a great one for feasibility studies for you, those who are looking for that kind of funding. The OPIC, now it's called the DFC. It's a great organization for you to look at as well. And then there are other, focused organizations that will finance projects for you. You call them impact investors. And, searching for some of those can also be the way you go for developing your overseas business. Without much ado, I know there's a few panelists here, so I will hand over to Mr. Federico Mano with Fulton Bank. Fulton Bank actually happens to be my bank as well, So, Mr. Federico, there you go.
Okay. Thank you, Kobena. Thank you all. My name is Federico Mano. I work for Fulton Bank in the International Banking Group. and we work very closely with exporters, basically what we call structured trade finance. It does sound like a little fancy kind of title, but it is not, because basically what we've been able to do in our bank anyway, to segment among different type of exporters in terms of sales, meaning that we can work with a company that either exports goods or services, and the annual revenues may be $500,000, $1 million, but we can scale that all the way up to $100 million. So I work for larger banks, so I do have the abilities to add value to hopefully the exporters that attend in this session today. I know we really don't have a lot of time, so I'd like to be concise, but I've also been told that I'd like to kind of provide as much feedback in terms of value that we can provide to exporters, again, of goods and services, because we're more driven on the service side as an economy versus manufacturing. Even though I'm not declining. I'm not underscoring, if you will, the sector of the economy in our country. Manufacturing is still very strong, but we're also very strong in services. In fact, we always run a surplus, an export trade surplus on the service versus on the manufacturing. As you can see from my first slide over there, we talk about trust. Okay, we talk about trust. That's not something we're actually, as a bank that finances exporters, we look for trust as well from exporters and from their buyers overseas. So a lot of considerations that need to take into account, that you need to look into it. We look for transparency among our customers. Obviously, we also work very closely with a lot of the U.S. government agencies, and you'll be talking to them today, the SBA, the Ex-Im Bank, and insurance as well. We use all of them to support, an international trade of line that will finance your exports. So having said that, financials and tax returns are extremely important to us. That's what we talk about transparency, right? We want to be transparent over here. And we've been able to advise our customers based on what they actually have, what they actually sell, what their revenues are, or in lieu of forecasting, if you will, their sales in the future, how we can assist them with our trade finance and our trade services. These are two aspects two of many aspects of international banking. Keep in mind one thing that I forgot to mention when I mentioned the word SBA or SBA loan guarantee programs or Ex-Im Bank loan guarantee programs or insurance, if you will. These are instruments, products that enhance your financial performance, if you will, as exporters. But keep in mind, these agencies do not lend money. They extend, their guarantees to a commercial bank, and then the commercial bank will have the credit enhancement needed to basically approve these lines of credit. Then some of the other questions, as you can see on my slide, they were talking about are negotiating with your buyers, knowing about buyers, use the USIAC, use other agencies, use the agencies that Kwabena mentioned earlier, because they know how to research, they know how to investigate, they know how to find out if these are legit potential buyers or potential distributors. For your sales, for your exports. So know your customers, KYC, know your customer. That's what we do as banks, as bankers. Payments are very important. It is an aspect of payment, and we'll go over that shortly on the second slide. But payments, have to do a lot with your sales, right? You sell, you negotiate pricing, you provide services, and you're getting paid as you make the sale. Then you need to look into shipping terms, right? What do you think when you sell overseas? What do you think your buyer is looking for? Is it looking for shipping terms such as CIF, cost, insurance, and freight? Is it looking for ex-works? Is it looking for freight on board, CNF? These are all shipping terms. And the best people, the best folks to provide you with additional information about such shipping terms are your freight forwarders, are your customs brokers, are your shipping lines, your logistics supply chains. They're the ones that can provide you additional information. But you need to be aware of these terms, and you need to know the Incoterms for each single shipping term, because you need to be aware if you ship out, okay? So you know you can speak intelligently with your buyers. And you also can find out what the preferences are. Why do I say this? Because as part of your negotiation, as you try to find out what the preferences are, you want to find out what the preferences are going to be in terms of currencies. As a first-time buyer, as a first-time exporter, seller, you want to try your best to conduct your transaction, your negotiation in U.S. dollars. But at the same time, you want to ask these questions to your buyer. You know, for instance, if you're dealing in Asia, you're doing trade in Asia, U.S. dollar. You trade in Europe. You trade in Canada, local currencies. Africa, dollars, but I've seen a lot of trade in Africa conducted, done, processed in either euro or British pounds. And then, of course, Middle East is mostly, you know, dollars, because as you know, the Middle East, they're very high, they're producers of oil and gas, and their particular commodity, oil, is denominated in dollars. So they're very familiar about dollar being the currency you would use for your export trade, export sales transactions. Markets are very volatile because obviously you're looking at two risks. You're looking at sovereign risk, which is the country risk, which could be the political risk, could be the economic risk, could be government risk. So sovereign risk is volatile. It's volatile for your trade. It's volatile for your currencies. And commercial risk, specifically, it is non-payment. Okay, you sell, you transact, you have an export sale transaction, but you're not getting paid. Well, how can you protect yourself? Okay, having said that, please slide number 2.
Great, Federico, you're at the 2-minute mark.
Oh, okay, all right. I'll be very fast on that. Yes, thank you for the reminder. Cash in advance, obviously as an exporter, is most advantageous. Letters of credit, confirmed, unconfirmed, that bank guarantees of getting paid. Export credit insurance, yes, you protect your insurance, you protect your receivables based on the fact that you will use open account. Open account is net 30 days. You get insurance coverage. You get insurance coverage of 90%. Then you protect the commercial risk, the non-payment that I mentioned to you. And then as you scroll down, you have documentary collection, which is a flow of documents between banks. Not the same guarantee as a letter of credit, but still protection to some extent. An open account is obviously net open account, net 30 days, so you're familiar with the domestic market. Slide number 3, please. There is a summary. Of all your considerations that you need to take into account. We talked about freight forwarders. We talked about shipping lines, negotiating. Do not negotiate only on prices. Make sure that you provide good service, because service goes a long way. A made in the USA product goes a long way as well, and services. Consider using Ex-Im Bank, SBA. Remember about the trade services are the products that I mentioned on my slide 2. A foreign exchange component is something that in the beginning you may not want to get involved with because it's a little too risky, but as you sell, as you continue to sell, know your customer, you might want to explore that option to increase, if you will, your sales. Having said that, I know I was running out of time. I'd like you to introduce to you Elizabeth Thomas. who is a great person, great knowledge, great resource. She works for Exim Bank. She's an Exim Bank Business Development Officer, but she's also an advisor, and she will be a wealth of source of information for any exporter on this audience. Thank you.
Thank you, Federico. I appreciate it. My name is Elizabeth Thomas. I'm the Director of Outreach and Education for the Export-Import Bank. And there's two main points I'd like you to take away this morning. We're throwing a lot of information from you or at you today. The first one is, if you have any questions in the days or weeks to come, you will have my contact information. Please feel free to reach out to me at any time. Next slide, please. Exim Bank is a U.S. federal government agency. We exist to support U.S. jobs by facilitating the export of U.S. goods and services. We're obviously headquartered in D.C., but we have regional offices across the country. Next slide, please. This is the second point I'd like you to take away today, that we support businesses of all sizes, and particularly small businesses. About 90% of our transactions support small businesses. No company or no transaction is too small. We support export sales of just a few $1,000s. And I want to make this point because a lot of times companies think that they're too small to come to us. Please contact us. We will work with you to support your transaction. Next slide, please. Federico just covered this, so I'm not going to go over it again. The only point I'd like to make is that obviously cash is king. If you can get it, take it all day long. The risk with asking for cash in advance is that you may not be competitive in foreign markets, and your foreign buyers are likely looking for open account credit terms. So what we're going to do is talk about how can you be more competitive in those markets by offering open account credit terms to your foreign buyers, but also minimize your risk. Next slide, please. The mechanism to do that is a product called export credit terms. And this is a product you can come to us at Exim for, or you can just Google it. There are private sector providers as well. And it's simply an insurance policy. It's an insurance policy the same way you have an insurance policy on your car or on your home. In this case, what you're insuring is the receivable that's generated when you give open account credit terms to a foreign buyer. So there's three reasons to consider export credit insurance. The first is as a sales tool. So again, be more competitive. And it doesn't have to be all or nothing. You can negotiate sales terms. Maybe if it's a new client, you want to say, hey, give me 25% up front, and I'll finance the back 75% for 30, 60, or 90 days. The point is, you know that those receivables will be insured, so you can negotiate what your sales terms will be. The second reason is risk protection. So as Federico mentioned, we are protecting that receivable. We protect it for both commercial and political risks, which we'll look at in just a minute. And we protect that receivable for up to 95% of the gross amount of the invoice. So basically, if you sell to a foreign buyer and you have export credit insurance on that sale and your foreign buyer doesn't pay, you submit a claim with us, we pay you, and then we go get the money from the foreign buyer. And the third reason is to generate cash flow, which is always important, but particularly now in these times, it's very, very important. So insuring your foreign receivables is going to increase your borrowing base, which makes it much more likely for your lender to increase your borrowing base. The export credit insurance policies, you can cover a single buyer, some of your portfolio, or your entire portfolio. So we're very flexible in how we structure your coverage. Next slide, please. The risks that we cover are the business risks, of course, of insolvency, bankruptcy, or protracted default. And unfortunately, these days, political risk is equally as important, covering for war, revolution, insurrection. Currency transfer risk. A currency transfer risk is if you're getting paid in dollars, and let's say the country where your foreign buyer is decides they're not going to let dollars out of the country. That's a currency transfer risk. And you're also covered for a cancellation of an import or export license. So, for example, let's say you've got $30,000 worth of goods. It's on a ship. It's going to a specific buyer in a specific country, and that country gets angry at us, and they say, we're no longer going to take imports from the United States. You would be covered for that as well. Next slide, please. I want to give you an example very quickly of one of our insurance policies. The name of this particular policy is the Express Insurance Policy. So we're going to assume that you're selling to the private sector buyer on terms of up to 60 days open account. Let's say you've got that $30,000 sale. Your premium cost is 65 cents per $100 for the gross value, and that's covered up to 95%. So on a $30,000 sale, you're covered up to $28,500 for a premium of $125. There's no minimum, there's no upfront. The premiums are paid on an as-you-go basis. So if you sell something on July 15th or 16th, you have until the end of August to go online, to go through our portal, to tell us who you sold to tell us how much you sold to them, and we calculate the premium for you. You put in your credit card. It's done in a matter of minutes. Next slide, please. We do have some eligibility criteria. You do need to be in business for at least a year, have a DUNS number and financial statements or tax returns, and the products that you sell has to have 50% U.S. content, and that includes labor and overhead, but not markup. Next slide. Very quickly, this is just a case study of a company that we work with in Mesquite, Texas, outside of Dallas, called FRITZ-PAK. They manufacture concrete additives. When 2008 hit, they experienced layoffs. It's a small company to begin with, it's about 20 people, and they had to lay off several of their workers, including the fellow who's in the picture here. And they actually were at the point of potentially having to sell the company. And instead, they decided to pivot, as we like to say today. They pivoted into international markets, and it turned out to be very successful for them. They were able to rehire their laid-off workers, including the fellow in the picture here. And today, they're a global provider and compete globally with their products and derive about 35% of their revenues for export. And what we were able to do for them by providing the export credit insurance was really to give Mr. Ojeda, the president and CEO, the peace of mind to take the risk to expand into these new markets, knowing that the risk was mitigated by having coverage on those foreign receivables. Next slide. And it's my pleasure now to introduce my colleague from the SBA, Bill Hauk, who's the regional manager, the Office of International Trade in the Mid-Atlantic region.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I've hit unmute. Can everybody hear me?
Yep, loud and clear.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm going to be very brief. Thanks again, Elizabeth, and thanks for the University of Maryland for hosting this. So Bill Hauk, I work out of the U.S. Export Assistance Center in Arlington, Virginia. I cover D.C., Virginia, Maryland, and West Virginia. I work very closely with the U.S. Commercial Service, who you'll hear from Andrew here soon. SBA provides loan guarantees, regularly used by Fulton Bank. I believe Rife has looked to use our Export Express program, but our programs help our company finance pretty much, I would say, any export-related activity. Go to the next slide, please. But real briefly, I just want to talk, in addition to SBA's Paycheck Protection Program and Emergency Income Disaster Loan Program, the three programs you're going to see here are also covered by SBA's Debt Relief Program. Very briefly, this program, for any companies that have an existing SBA loan, SBA is paying 6 months of principal, interest, and fees. And then any loans that are booked and fully dispersed by September 27th, SBA will make 6 months of principal and interest and fees. If the bank provides a deferment period, our payments start after that deferment period. So there are companies out there that are not having to make a loan payment for up to 9 months. But all three of the programs you're going to see next are covered by that debt relief program. Next slide, please. We have 3 loan guarantee programs. As Federico said, we don't provide direct lending. We provide a bank a 90% guarantee to give the companies the working capital they need at any stage of their export development. You're going to hear from the U.S. Commercial Service, as you heard from Rife. They went on a 1 or 2 gold key missions with the U.S. Commercial Service. They also worked with the state, I believe, under the STEP grant program, which you'll hear about. From the time that you start speaking with either the U.S. Commercial Service or the State Economic Development Office or Department of Commerce, you're going to find that working capital is going to come into play. You may find that you need to change labeling, change things from change plans into metric. But just to enter that market, you may find that you're going to have to spend some capital, and you may not want to spend that valuable cash on your balance sheet. So we have a program, the Export Express program, that will cover, I'm not exaggerating, any export-related activity. And the operative word is any, because if you need to change your website, I believe the Commercial Service and the Department of Commerce are heavily training companies on how to remotely reach out to companies using the value of a website. If you need to beef up your website, you can fund that activity. You can fund receivables, inventory, commercial real estate, equipment, permanent working capital. Everything can be done under that program. And again, SBA, if you, let's say it's a $100,000 loan, SBA is making the first 6 months of payments, principal, interest, and fees for you if it's booked by the 27th of September. The Export Working Capital Program is strictly for just transactions. That's for receivables, inventory. In this area, bid bonding is a big need because a lot of companies are defense services related, so they're working with foreign governments, and those government tenures tend to require bid bonding. So we provide a bid bond where, with an example, Fulton Bank would issue a standby letter of credit requiring you to come up with collateral. We only require 25% collateral, making it extremely valuable because in most cases banks are requiring 100% collateral. But that's just for transaction. That goes up to $5 million. Our maximum exposure with any one company is $5 million. And then lastly is the international trade loan. That is for expansion and building capacity through hiring people, financing or refinancing equipment, and building out or completely greenfield building of a new facility. Terms can range anywhere from 10 years or the useful life of equipment all the way up to 25 years for commercial real estate. Once again, SBA is paying 6 months of principal, interest, and fees. So now is what I really want to leave companies with is now is the time to look at your working capital needs, just not in the form of having to boost your export sales, but also to get through this next year. If you've got unencumbered assets, now is the time to think about, should I tap into these unencumbered assets, get valuable cash with extremely low interest rates. I mean, right now, I believe although many banks aren't providing fixed rates under our program, the 30-year fixed rate mortgage now is down to 2.8%. That can give you an idea of the types of rates that banks are offering at this time. So I really want people to think about, if they need additional cash to keep them competitive, to keep people employed, now's the time to look at working with your bank to tap into those unencumbered assets. I'm going to leave it there, and hopefully we'll get lots of questions, and I'll turn it over to the U.S. Commercial Service.
Thank you so much, Bill. Hey, everyone. My name is Andrew Glass. I'd first just like to thank Rebecca and University of Maryland for having us today, and especially the U.S. Commercial Service as a panelist. I'm a commercial service officer currently detailed to the Baltimore U.S. Export Assistance Center. And in this role, I support our mission at the Commercial Service to unlock the export potential of U.S. companies. And I have the pleasure of focusing on Maryland exporters. And you can think of the Commercial Service, our role, as your account executive to walk you through your entire export journey and plug you into these various resources that you're hearing from today. So I'm part of a team of 6 trade professionals who work in our Baltimore office. And we're part of a powerful network of more than 100 offices that cover the entire United States called Export Assistance Centers, which are staffed by 240 trade professionals across the country. And our network is paired with our colleagues abroad in 118 embassies and consulates in more than 80 countries. And that represents more than 90% of U.S. export markets. And these offices are staffed by commercial diplomats, which I will become when I go on my next assignment abroad, who coordinate with our domestic partners to deliver services for U.S. companies abroad in their target market. And we also have nearly 700 locally employed staff in these markets who specialize in key industries and really understand the market in which they're operating. And they have often been working for the Commercial Service for decades, delivering services in those local markets. And the services that we deliver abroad include market intelligence, finding your partners abroad, delivering background reports on foreign companies. So you may have been approached by a foreign partner who wants to do business with you, or a customer, and you want to know a little bit more information on them, such as their credit worthiness, their reputation in the local market. We can do those background checks for you. We do business matchmaking abroad. And we also offer services to put a spotlight on your company or product in the foreign market. And what that is essentially is an event, let's say at the ambassador's residence, where we would invite you in the foreign market to deliver a presentation on your new product. And we'd invite local decision makers, potential customers, and potential partners. So it's a really cool, really unique service that we offer in these foreign markets. And our services as we relate to finance, financing your exports, is primarily to connect you with these wonderful partners who you've already heard from today, such as SBA and EXIM and DFC, Development Finance Corporation, and to share these resources with you and to make sure that you're plugged in and making the most of these services. And just to highlight 2 really quick summaries where you can find information about all of these resources, you can go to trade.gov/finance, where you can see resources on SBA and EXIM Bank's programs. You can see an in-depth report about export credit insurance options there, managing foreign exchange risk, as well as steps that you need to know to make sure that you get paid by your foreign buyer. So really helpful resources on that page. And also we help to maintain Export University, which is available at export-u.com. And there you can find specific webinars where you can sign up to learn about the nuts and bolts of exporting. And there's a particularly helpful webinar there about how to set foreign payment terms, as well as a webinar on SBA loans to fund export sales on export-u.com. And that is it for us. And now I'd just like to turn it over to Jessica Reynolds, the Senior Director of the Office of International Investment and Trade at the Maryland Department of Commerce. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Andrew. And good morning, everyone. As Andrew introduced, I am Jessica Reynolds. I am the Director of the Office of International Investment and Trade at the Maryland Department of Commerce. Our office is responsible for 3 goals in the state. That is increasing exports from the state of Maryland, attracting foreign businesses to the state to create jobs, and marketing Maryland internationally. Today, we're focusing, of course, on companies looking to export, but specifically through financing options. So I'd like to go over our state program that can support these efforts. The primary program we have available to Maryland companies wishing to secure some financial support for exporting is the Export MD Grant Program. Some of the details are up on the slide here. This program offers eligible Maryland companies up to a $5,000 reimbursement towards their export marketing activities. Most of our companies have historically used this program for trade shows and travel, but of course during a global pandemic, that's not very realistic. So I'd like to highlight the fact that this program also allows reimbursement towards several non-travel related activities, including digital marketing, website globalization, compliance testing for foreign markets, shipping of sample products to foreign markets, and export research. So this program does include a 1/3 cost share, as you see there in the first bullet, by the company. So it is important to keep that in mind, that you would need to expend $7,500 in order to receive a maximum reimbursement of $5,000. But we do have many companies take advantage of this program and find it very useful. The SBA does partially fund our Export MD program through the STEP program, or the State Trade Export Promotion Program, STATE. And it is due to the SBA being able to move pretty quickly to make some adjustments that we are able to support even more of those non-travel activities than we did in the past. So I also want to talk a little bit about the application process. Companies do need to meet certain qualifications to be eligible, which are listed here. Those are having business operations in the state of Maryland, being in good standing with our State Department of Justice and Taxation, being in existence for at least 1 year, not receiving an Export MD award in the past 12 months. The company needs to be a small business as defined by the SBA. And of course, the activities need to be used for an eligible international business initiative, primarily focused on marketing activities versus operational activities. For the digital marketing and website activities, we also are looking for companies to have an existing website to build upon versus creating the website from scratch. So in order to apply, companies would need to work with one of our regional managers in our office on their application through our online system. We accept applications on the 1st of every month, and we recommend companies begin the application process 1 month prior to the application deadline for the non-travel grant activities, or at least 2 months prior for any planned travel. The reason for this is that there is a 1-month review period between the application deadline and the application award if a company is approved, and the activities do need to take place after the award. So once we receive the application on the 1st of the month, our regional managers will give the application one final check through, work with the client, and then it gets sent to our outside review committee. So companies can expect a response about the award on the 1st of the following month. So for example, if anyone listening today was looking to apply, the next application deadline is August 1st. And then once you apply during August, the review committee would consider the application and the applicant would receive a response by September 1st. If the award is granted, then activities could begin right away on September 1st. I'll just also briefly note a few of our other programs that aren't this direct financial support, but still are useful in case anyone listening is not aware of them. Our office does have 16 representatives around the world that can offer up to 20 hours of free assistance towards market research or partner distributor searches or other areas. It is flexible in terms of the scope of work. We also, during normal times, work closely with the Center for Global Business at the Smith School. And I know that Rebecca will be touching on their programs, but we do collaborate with them as well to match businesses with student teams for additional consulting support. And we also normally are offering a 2/3 reimbursement to any of the export services offered by the USIAC office, for which there is a fee, although I understand that they have reduced their fees to accommodate businesses during these extraordinary times. But in the event there is any program that involves one, please contact our office and you may be eligible for a partial reimbursement. So with that, I want to make sure we still have time for the rest of the speakers. So I would like to introduce Phil Grove of ELIGIBILITY Dredges, and today he is representing the District Export Council.
Thank you, Jessica, and thank you to all the other speakers and for everybody participating today. For my purpose of speaking here today is to introduce the Maryland District Export Council. And first, to introduce myself, I'm Philip Grove, and in my day job, I work in an international sales and business development capacity for ELIGIBILITY Dredges. So I am a practitioner, or I am an active exporter of Maryland-made products. But as Jessica mentioned today, I'm here to speak to you in my capacity as the chair of the Maryland DC District Export Council. So we call ourselves the DEC, and everybody you've heard from today is a member of our District Export Council. So while you were hearing from some practitioners, from government, from banks, from a lot of different organizations that can help you, if you're not quite sure where to start, I suggest you can start with the DEC. We really are Maryland's peer-to-peer network for exporters. So we are quite proud of our website, mvbcdeck.com. And through that, there's a lot of resources available that you can browse at your own convenience. But also, if you're running into an export issue or an export challenge, you can reach out to us on our website through the Contact Us form, and you can be connected to any one of the speakers you've seen here today, or to one of our other members who are an expert in their niche to support the export industry, whether it's accounting or finance or legal matters, freight forwarders, etc. So we really are the export peer-to-peer network here in Maryland. Usually we're reaching out to the community through events like this. Most years their events are in person, but we are doing this series of webinars here with our partners in the MAPIT Alliance. So please do stay tuned for our events. Also, at the moment, we are working on developing our signature event, which is called Export Tech, which is more of a tailored to the export companies or the potential export companies' needs, with the goal of developing an export business plan at the end of the session. So we will be recruiting and advertising for that as the year moves forward. And we do encourage you to, again, visit our website and please contact us if we can be of any assistance to you. And with that, I'll turn it back to our host, Rebecca.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Phil. I've already introduced myself, so I'll talk a little bit more about the center and some of the activities, some of the programs that you can engage with here at the university if you're interested in getting a leg up on your export practice. So the Center for Global Business at the Smith School is the hub and driver of global activity at the school itself. We focus on 5 main areas of activity: school internationalization and partnerships, student programming, research and thought leadership, faculty development, and capacity building and trade for business, which is how we fit in here. And we are one of 15 nationally recognized centers and a recipient of the Title VI grant known as CYBER, which supports all of our activities and expands our mission outside of campus. And there are 2 programs or opportunities that I'll mention today, both of which really emphasize the Smith School's commitment to supporting Maryland businesses like yours. So the first, thank you so much to Kwabena and even to Jessica for mentioning their experience in working with us on this program. The first one is the Maryland Global Consulting Program. And if you're thinking ahead to the fall, which is really around the corner, or even the spring in terms of a project you'd like to work on where you could benefit from having a consultant's outside perspective, this would be a great program for you. As Jessica mentioned, it is a joint program with the Maryland Department of Commerce, and we've been working together on this for the past several years and have already helped well over a dozen Maryland companies through this program. So what this program does is it matches you, Maryland companies, with a team of highly talented, trained students at the university, so undergrads or MBA students, who will address a specific challenge or question that you have, such as pricing, market selection, strategy, and so on. And the students work under the supervision of a faculty member within the frame of a course that teaches them about the practice of consulting. And the students will use your data, your company profile, your products and services, whatever information and data you can provide to customize the work that they do specifically for you. So some key elements. You, as the company, would identify your challenge or your question, and then figure out if this is a question that you would like a group of students to help you address. At that point, you would then move forward in either contacting us at the university or contacting the Maryland Department of Commerce, and you would work on an application to the program directly with the Maryland Department of Commerce or Jessica Reynolds' team. At that point, the Department of Commerce brings in my team. And we help you scope the project with the Department of Commerce and match you to a student project team, and then we launch, where you get to meet the students meet you, and you talk through the frame of the issue and timeline for delivery of a solution. The projects take place over the course of 15 weeks, so you have a dedicated team of students working with you for 15 weeks during this semester. And again, you're involved in the scoping, the launch, final presentation where you get your deliverables and lots of different points as you would like during the time frame of the project. So the fees for this opportunity are listed here on the screen, and you can see that they're very reasonable costs that really go into supporting the delivery of the program. They are well below market value and certainly significantly below what you would pay for any kind of McKinsey consultant. So again, it's a great opportunity to work with a group of very talented students to address a question or challenge that's specific to your company. We are happy to hear from anyone who's interested really at any time. And specifically, if you're interested in working with a group of students in the fall term, we'd love to hear from you by August 1st. The second opportunity that I'll mention is a brand new one, and it's more of an educational focus. The Smith School has launched, as you can see just a couple of days ago, we have launched our first free web-based learning program for you, Maryland residents, and small business owners here in the state to help you navigate the economic effects of COVID-19. The program, again, that's completely online, is meant to address questions like marketing and brand strategies that would present for you the best opportunities for recovery. Other questions might be if, looking at new data that could help you making financial decisions, and maybe something about risk management. How could you help yourself manage the risks that you're facing right now? It would also help you sharpen key business skills like business leadership, strategy development, decision-making, economic decision-making that's data-driven. And certainly there's a piece here on marketing, especially around social media and digital marketing for business. The format of, again, this free program is live webinars led by some of Smith's very best faculty in key areas like strategy, accounting, and digital marketing. And from those free webinars, you also have the opportunity to launch into the MicroMasters courses that delve deeper into each one of these topics. As an added bonus, there are two other features of this. There's a panel discussion that we're planning as well that focuses specifically on challenges that Black business owners are facing here in the state. And we have partnered with the SBDC or the Small Business Development Center, again, as an added bonus to provide one-on-one counseling and consulting for you specifically. So again, all of this is free. It's a brand new program. It's a great opportunity to educate yourself and rely on the Smith School to help you overcome the challenges of the current economic crisis as a result of the pandemic. So here we are at the place where we'd love to hear your questions. I think that the first question that we had was about contact information, and here you are. You can see all of the contact information for all of the presenters, who again, I thank for having been with us this morning. So please, again, feel free to reach out to any of us if you have questions. Some other questions I have seen come in, and this one is for Bill. It's about SBA loans. So the question is, for SBA loans that support real estate, like building a school, can the real estate be located outside the U.S.?
No, all assets have to be located in the United States, and so that is the biggest caveat to our program. Assets have to be located in the United States.
Great. Thank you, Bill. The next question, I think, is one that speaks to whether or not any of these programs or all of these programs and opportunities can cover services and digital solutions and not just manufactured goods. Maybe I think that generally the response is yes, there are opportunities for service providers to take advantage of these opportunities as well. But Elizabeth, do you want to address that from the EXIM side?
Thank you. So yes, Rebecca, the answer is yes. We do cover services. If you have a structured payment plan, we can cover those payments that have not yet been made. The services do need to be delivered by U.S.-based personnel. They can be temporarily located overseas, but they need to have their home base be in the U.S.
Great, thank you. And Bill, I'm assuming that's the same for SBA.
Well, SBA has no foreign content restrictions, so services can be performed by foreign individuals overseas, but billing has to occur from the United States.
And same thing for banks as well. You know, we cover services.
All right, I don't see any other questions that have come in, and we are just at noon. So what I'm going to suggest is if we have not gotten to your question, you have all of our contact information here in front of you. I would encourage you to reach out to any of us if you have questions about anything that you have seen here, and we'll make sure that we get you in front of the right person who can answer that for you. So once again, thank you everyone for joining us, the MAP-IT Alliance and our guest speakers for this webinar on financing your exports. Please don't forget to take the survey that will come up in the pop-up window as soon as you close out of the webinar. And again, feel free to reach out to any of us as you would like to. And if you are trying to figure out how to get paid, how to finance your exports, or even if you're working with a difficult customer abroad who just hasn't paid on time, we especially want to hear from you. So thanks again, everyone, for tuning in.